Like much of the public, I had heard about this garbage patch, all this trash in the world's oceans. And there are lots of stories. It's an island. When you see it for yourself, then you really know. It's not an island. It's even worse. It is a smog of microplastics everywhere. It's across the entire ocean.
So, what exactly do you do when you realize the ocean might have more plastic than fish? Hi, I'm Marco. I'm a filmmaker, an ocean lover, and a guy who thought he knew a thing or two about plastic. Until I realized I didn't. I grew up in Venice Beach, LA in the 80s and 90s, surf, skateboard, sunsets, and trash. Actual trash in the ocean. Floating diapers, fast food wrappers. Growing up, it was just part of beach life in Venice. But then I saw the water get cleaner. Organizations like Heal the Bay taught us kids to care. We learned storm drains lead straight to the ocean. And we weren't shy about letting the adults in our lives know. And over time, LA started to change. So I always carried this quiet hope that people can change things. Until I started traveling, and I started seeing the same plastic problem worse in some of the most beautiful places on Earth. Trash-strewn hillsides, clogged rivers, burning landfills. And the more I saw, the more I wanted to understand, why is this happening everywhere? And what can we actually do about it? Here's the short version. Plastic was invented in the early 1900s, but it didn't take off until after World War II. Suddenly, plastic was replacing everything. Glass bottles, paper bags, tin lunchboxes, you name it. In the US, soda companies figured out they could ditch reusable glass bottles for single-use plastic. No need to collect, wash, or reuse anything. Just sell it, toss it, and let the taxpayer deal with the mess. And the thing is, plastic is magic. It's cheap, it's moldable, it can be turned into anything. But that magic comes at a cost. Most plastic is made from petroleum and a stew of over 6,000 chemicals, many of which are barely studied, barely regulated, and in some cases, straight up toxic. We're talking about chemicals linked to cancer, hormone disruption, and all kinds of health issues. And they're in everything. Surely, we can all agree to ban the worst of the worst, right? So when I heard about INC 5 in Busan, Korea, the UN summit to create a global plastics treaty, I decided to go. Just like the UN did with mercury and other dangerous substances, this treaty aims to set global rules for what materials should never be in our products again. You've got the petrochemical lobbyists, the small island leaders, UN delegates, scientists, all trying to hash out the future of plastic. And then there's Greenpeace. While everyone else was shuffling papers around, they were out there making noise, literally.
No more plastic! No more plastic!
They unveiled this enormous flag of an eye made from portraits from around the world. And yep, some activists literally boarded a ship in protest. It was bold, it was beautiful, they were definitely arrested. And it was a reminder that some people will do anything to make sure we don't look away.
Stop plastic production now!
Check, mic one. Check.
It was not quiet.
We're gonna have problems.
Let's just say it was a reminder of why we doc filmmakers love our sound recordists. Me, by myself, not ideal.
Here we got construction, really, at the UN summit.
But in that chaos, I found some real conversations.
Speeding camera B.
Half of the plastics ever made have been made in the last 20 years. So this is very much a problem of our lifetime. And I know I'm committed, and all of the people in this building are committed to fixing this problem in our lifetime as well.
We have microplastics in our blood and our brains, and it is coursing through our bodies. If we have a global plastics treaty that's restricting the amount of plastic that's used, getting rid of some of the most problematic polymers and plastics, we could have much better lives if we get this plastic issue under control, which is why it's so exciting that global leaders are here.
We are like a neutral convener that just bring groups together that don't necessarily see eye to eye to try to forge solutions.
and we took 165 executives into the middle of the Bermuda Triangle where all the plastic gathers in the ocean. So we had like the petrochemical industry on the same boat with Greenpeace and the environmental leaders, stuck on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for 4 days. One of the consumer packaged good companies that were there found 3 of their toothbrushes floating around in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's just like overwhelming evidence that we need to do something about that.
The entire ocean have this abundance of microplastics everywhere you look. You know, you don't see it on the surface, but you drag a net, you get a handful of like microplastic particles. And then you sail 100 miles, you do it again. You drag your net, you get a handful. You go 100 miles, drag your net, you get a handful. And that's where I began to realize that the science I was doing on the environmental impact at the end of the pipeline was not where solutions have to start. The extraction of the raw materials, the fossil fuels that make plastics, the consumer products, that's where the solutions start to end the problem of trash I was witnessing in the middle of the ocean. You've got to have design standards. You can't take a material, plastic, designed to last forever and make a product you use once and throw it away. That's nonsense.
The truth is, recycling hasn't lived up to its promise. Despite decades of sorting and good intentions, only about 5 to 9% of plastic ever actually gets recycled. The rest ends up in landfills, incinerators, or worse, shipped to countries with weaker environmental protections, where it's dumped near rivers, burned in open-air pits, or swept out to the sea. It's not just a waste issue, it's a justice issue. It's a story about power, about who makes decisions, who profits, and who pays the price.
When you come from a poor country like Haiti, young people don't really have a voice. They are not listening. Even though you're trying to help, but it's not working. They are too busy doing political things. Plastic is having an impact on our health and the health of our children. So you have to take action. And that's why I'm here, hoping that we'll get something out of this summit.
Pacific peoples are on the front line to the climate crisis and plastic pollution because it comes from oil and gas. And Pacific people are contributing to all of those crises, the very least, and yet they are disproportionately bearing the worst of those crises. It's one of the things that I come here to these negotiations championing, to make sure that people understand that when we're talking about plastic circularity, I'm talking about circularity from an Indigenous perspective, and I'm hoping that it will become part of the implementation process and that Indigenous peoples will be able to lead that.
So why didn't the treaty get signed at INC 5? Well, that depends on who you ask. The coalition of countries pushing for a strong treaty say the summit was swarmed by hundreds of lobbyists, many with more access than expected. It was divisive and it made progress hard. Meanwhile, UN leaders like Jyoti Mathur-Philip, Executive Secretary of the Summit, believe any treaty is better than none.
The consensus is not easy. We have to talk to every country, we have to listen to every country, and we have to bring a deal that every country is okay with, because what you don't want is someone to walk out of the process. In my view, there is no weak treaty. If you can get 198 countries to come together and agree on global rules, it means already that there is ambition in the world to change.
But others, like scientist Dr. Lisa Ertl, aren't so sure.
The dangers we're facing if we don't walk away from this with a strong treaty is that things will just stay as the status quo. The production of plastic will continue to increase at an exponential rate. The amount of plastics in the environment will continue to increase at an exponential rate. We really need to get it right.
The US, well, they didn't join either group. They stayed somewhere in the middle, and many say they were speaking more for the plastic-using corporations than the public. And that was when the Democrats were still in power. And it raises the question, what's next? Still, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because of the passionate, thoughtful people I met working on this issue. I met Dr. Anya Brandon from Ocean Conservancy, who reminded me California has already led the way, passing world-class policy and investing in scalable solutions.
California has really been on the cutting edge in terms of tackling plastic pollution across the entire life cycle. So both upstream, making and using less plastic in the first place, but also in its use. So actually making sure that products are designed better, that we're holding producers accountable, and then also at the end of life in terms of cleanup. That is going to absolutely change the game for packaging, yes in California, yes in the United States, but also around the world. California is a huge economy, and when producers make that kind of change, it's going to be really impactful.
A system built on endless production and fake solutions isn't sustainable. We need to design materials that work with nature and policies that hold polluters accountable, since they clearly can't seem to hold themselves accountable. But we're actually going to have to wait and see. INC 5.2 is coming up soon in Geneva. Can governments stand up to the petrochemical giants? Can we agree to stop making the worst plastics? Can we shift from damage control to real change to come out with a meaningful treaty? I don't know, but I'll be watching, and I hope you will too. So hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs to see it, and check out the full interviews to go deeper. Change isn't just possible, it's already happening, and together we can make sure it spreads.